Coming up with This Week in Computer Hardware, Phanteks Enthoo EVOLV, SSDs for everyone, Oculus Rift PC Preorders, eye tracking, and more. It's all coming up next on Twitch.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twitch.
Bandwidth for Twitch is provided by CacheFly at CACHEFLY.com. Hi, everybody. It's time for our annual audience survey. We'd really like to hear from you. It helps us understand our audience better, know what you like and don't like, how you listen to the show. It also helps us tell advertisers what kind of people listen. But I promise you, your feedback is always kept personally anonymous. All you have to do is visit twit.tv/survey and let us know what you think. It'll just take a few minutes, and it'll help us make Twit even better. We really appreciate your support and any help you can give us. twit.tv/survey.
This is Twitch, This Week in Computer Hardware, episode 350, recorded February 11th, 2016. Not even an SSD can save you now. This episode of This Week in Computer Hardware is brought to you by Drobo, a family of safe and expandable yet simple-to-use storage arrays. Drobos are designed to protect your important data forever. Visit drobo.com/twit and use the code TWIT100 to save $100 off a Drobo Mini, Drobo 4-Bay, or Drobo 5N. Welcome to Twitch, This Week in Computer Hardware, Twitch's weekly show that aims to bring you the most useful, most informative, and most elegantly presented information in the entire universe of PC and mobile hardware. I'm your sophisticated host, Patrick Norton, joined by the witty and urbane Mr. Shrout.
I feel very sophisticated now that you bring it up like that. Yeah.
I'm waiting for the
about
first email. It's like
50%.
It's urbane, Mr. Norton, not urbane.
No, doing good. It's very cold here, but the sun is out as I look across the office to the one window that we're allowed to see the outside world with, and it's very sunny. So that's a big plus. When I ate my lunch today, I sat by the window so that the sun would warm me up a little bit more, and it did the trick. So that's a positive.
Wow. It's 25 degrees there, man.
Yeah, it's cold. I think on Saturday the low is 9.
So 25 is practically balmy compared to where you've been.
Right. Correct. Yeah.
Geez, let's see. It was cold a week and a half ago. Got down to like 39, and
that's pretty cold for out there. That's chilly.
I love it when I'm a big fan of Forecast.io, which is a service that does weather information, and the app they do on the iPhone has gotten less strange. It's called Dark Sky. It used to be this really peculiar app where it would be like, here's the weather by you. It's boring. And then it would show you like the Doppler radar for a storm somewhere. But what's really cool about it is if you go to their website, it gives you a really spectacular interface. And what they do is they take a whole bunch of different services and aggregate them into what their best guess of what these different averages are. And it's amazing when you start realizing, when you look at their detailed forecast graphs, how radically different the projections from different agencies are.
Yes.
It can be quite an education on
how forecasting works in general.
Yeah. That forecasting really is a guess, but the nice thing is, though, is I particularly love that it'll give you notifications for when it's going to rain, and they're actually spectacularly accurate.
Yeah,
which,
I like the down-to-the-minute weather forecasting. I'm a fan of that.
So the good news is it's going to be 33 tomorrow, and then it's going to drop down to like 19 or 22. But next week, it's going to be 41 degrees. That's the peak. It'll drop down to 23 that night, which will be very balmy compared to Sunday night, but it's probably going to rain.
It's practically shorts weather.
Practically shorts weather. Rainy shorts weather. Just not at midnight. Just try not to wear your shorts before. Oh, heck, it'll be 30 degrees by 9:30, 10 o'clock in the morning. You're great. There you go. Forecast.io, Dark Sky if you're on iOS. I just wanted to give a shout out to that if you're a weather nerd. Or if you're just suffering.
Want to know when it's going to be warm again? You can check that out.
I feel like I should go drive to something winter-like so I can
Go to
be more
Tahoe or something
sympathetic.
for a while.
You know, it's driving to winter. It's a radical concept. I think you should check it out, man. I think you do very well in Tahoe. Phanteks Enthoo EVOLV ITX enclosure review. Very unusual for us. We're actually looking at a full-size case, which is actually a medium-sized case. No, actually, it is a mini ITX case. I thought
Mhm.
it was an actual ATX case, but apparently my
So
reading
they
comprehension
have
has
one
dropped through the
called the
floor.
EVOLV ATX
Thank
that
you.
is very similar design and everything. This is just the smaller, shorter brother of said case. Yeah.
Red on the inside, black on the outside, a window to display your components against that. I actually kind of like the idea that they've got the two-tone, you know, the red risers and stands and,
Yep.
mounts.
I actually really like the coloration of this, and I think they offer it in a couple different options as well. Like you can get just black
Really?
on black, you can get white interior, black exterior. I think you can get white exterior and black interior, or I know they have at least this red interior, and it definitely helps like everything inside stand out. And I like if you look at the main photo at the top of the page that there's like a little bit of red accents along the side edges there as well. That helps it stand out. But this case it's relatively cheap. It's got some pretty impressive features and styling to it. I think a lot of people are gonna like what this does. If you go to the second page of the story, you can get some more photos of kind of the bright red interior.
Right.
Now, obviously, we talk about a lot of components on this podcast, and as you've seen, we have a tremendous amount of red and black design cues on motherboards or video cards or whatever it is.
It's a thing.
And so it should be it should be very easy to kind of, you know, put everything together and get a nice red and black system design in its entirety, even in this mini ITX form factor. If you look at, go ahead.
I was going to say, so Sebastian wrote the review up. One of the things he notes that the build quality is very high. This is a $65, $70 case, depending on when you're buying it. Along with the black and red with the window, you can get a black on black version of the case. You can get a black version of the case without a window, which I think is pretty awesome. They have a white version of the case also with a window. So I like the fact that they give you a whole bunch of different variations on the theme. Obviously, my war against Windows, I get more and more excited because 2016 seems to be the year that you at least have the option of not having a window on your case, which is a big plus.
Sure.
Pretty spacious on the interior, plenty of room for full-size components, ton of cable management options for hiding stuff. And said it was fairly quiet, too, Sebastian did. This is...
Yeah. If you look, like there's a giant 200 millimeter intake fan on the front. The front panel just kind of comes off. No 5 1/4 inch bays here. Yeah, you can see the fan in that shot there. And actually, you can see the front panel comes off. You got a fan filter you can take out. The back is a nice touch. Like they give you the Velcro cable ties kind of already pre-installed. Right. So you're not using zip ties, you're not using Velcro ones. So if you have that problem where you run a bunch of cables, you zip tie them, and then you forget one, or you need to reroute one, and you've got to like cut all of the cables to move, or cut all the zip ties, don't cut the cables, cut all the zip ties to move the cable to a different location or whatever. That's a pain in the butt. And then during the installation process, if you go to the next page, there's some interesting things about it there. Like if you go down to where we're talking about the graphics card installation, the next picture down, there's like a little door that opens up that if you have a long graphics card, that it opens up so you can install the GPU, and then it closes back to kind of give it a nice clean finished look. The Phanteks logo is on the other side of that. But I think it's just like a nice little touch that allows you, and then you can mount an SSD to the top of that unit as well. And you can see there, as you look through the housing unit on the bottom, you can see the hard drive installed off to the right-hand side. You can see the power supply installed on the left-hand side. It's all a pretty impressive thing. There was one concern with the GPU installed there. Yeah, you can see it's pretty close to the bottom of the housing unit there. It would be nice to maybe see some kind of retention mechanism, and that's a fairly large graphics card for a mini ITX system. But if you're building a mini ITX gaming PC, this is essentially what you would get. So some kind of way to do that would be better. But the rest of the installation is pretty simple. And I think if you go down a little bit more to the cooling option section, this is my favorite feature of this case that the bigger brother had as well. A couple more down. It actually has a slide out tray. Keep going. That here you go. Next photo here. So you see that slide out tray is actually on the top of the case, and that is for you to easily mount like a water cooler, like a self-contained water cooler or Corsair or whatever, right? And then you just push it back in, and now you have that installed, right? So it's to mount radiators or fans to, or whatever you're going to do. So you don't have to worry about taking off the top panel case or screwing, through the case, or like, having to put hands on either sides of two pieces or something like that. It's actually a really, really neat addition to it. And the EVOLV ATX has that in its bigger cousin as well. As you said, it actually performed very well in terms of noise and temperatures and that type of thing. And it is an ITX case, so it's tighter, to work in than most other designs, but it has a lot of kind of flexibility options there, like that little door for the GPU that makes installation just a little bit cleaner, a little bit neater across the board. And like you said, I think it's selling for $69 right now on Amazon. Nah, it might have gone up a little bit on Amazon. What's the Newegg price? $64.99, I think, is where it was at when this was published this week. Yep, now it's up to 69. So it's going to vary a little bit here or there. But under $75, fairly robust case design. The only weaknesses that Sebastian really had on it were limited GPU clearance, right? So if you have a GPU cooler that has a kind of a beefy, extends past 2 slots, it's probably not going to fit in this case. And then because of that narrow gap you have there, the GPU fans tend to spin a little bit faster and be a little bit noisier than you might otherwise have with that. So maybe if you have a blower style cooler, that wouldn't be the case. But it's a pretty unique option, pretty neat option for $70 for those of you interested in small form factor builds. And I do like the aesthetics of it quite a bit, both the coloring and the shape and angles and stuff to it. So it's a good job by them for the Phanteks Enthoo EVOLV ITX. All of those first 3 words are spelled different than you think they're spelled. If you're only listening to the podcast, do some Googling and find it. Phanteks is Phantekes. And then Enthoo, ENTHOO. Yeah. So
it sounds like a sort of minor series of planets, cities, and or characters in Star Wars.
Yeah.
And you had an update for the Rise of the Tomb Raider, AMD, and NVIDIA performance results. If you haven't seen them, there's some spectacular 4K graphics demos that PC Per, aka Ryan, Mr. Shrout, has uploaded to YouTube that are pretty spectacular. There was a patch. What did it do?
So the patch actually did some significant things. It added new graphics options. It added something they call, what do they call it exactly? Specular highlights, I think. It's the last page. If you go to that Rise of the Tomb Raider story, it's the last page of the story now. They added specular reflection quality, which was not a thing there before. They added an option to disable film grain independent of screen effects. They've improved HBAO plus quality. They improved NVIDIA SLI performance. They improved some SLI glitches, fixed some of that stuff. They have a resolution modifier that allows you to use a lower rendering resolution independent of the window size when running in window mode. There's a whole bunch of stuff in there. They also have like a warning message now if you run at certain image quality settings to let you know that, hey, you're going to need a lot of graphics memory to do this, which was something they didn't have when we first ran these tests before. Also, since I ran the test the first time in this update, AMD released a new driver, 16.1.1 instead of just 16.1. So we used updated driver, an updated version of the game, and just basically saw how did the game performance change based on those updates for both one AMD and one NVIDIA card, and then looked at SLI scaling. The good news is on the AMD side, on the R9 Nano, we saw significantly less of the stutter and hitch, like the high frame time spikes, with the new driver and the new version of the game. I don't know exactly which one is responsible for that change, but if you look at the frame times graphs of either resolution 2560 or 4K, you'll see that the black line has a lot of real high spikes in it. I think the next graph down. Yeah, right there. The black has a lot of high spikes in it. The orange doesn't really have any at all, just a couple of them towards the end. So that's a big improvement for AMD on that side. On the multi-GPU side, both of them do okay. Both of them scale relatively well, but you do see some more frame time variance with the AMD Radeon R9 Nanos than we saw at the GTX 980s. Could be a result of the added, the extra memory that the 980 Ti's have. It could just be something with how crossfire scaling in this game. But either way, that's kind of where you're at. Multi-GPU seems to work better on NVIDIA than on AMD, at least at the current stop. So, and like I said, when we talked about last week, this game uses a lot of GPU horsepower. So multi-GPU is something that should have been beneficial for Rise of the Tomb Raider, whether or not you're using this generation of cards or last generation of cards or whatever. So just wanted to, had some requests in our comments to test multi-GPU, had some requests to test the updated AMD driver, and it just so happened that when we sat down to test, Steam pushed an update to the game as well that had some pretty significant performance optimizations in it as well. So just wanted to bring that up if anybody hadn't checked that out again from last week.
Good to know. Also, 4K gaming, I think, is finally starting to get really exciting.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's monitors are still cheap. And I'm hoping that by middle of this year, we'll have just like another classification of GPU that might make things a little bit more affordable. I don't think it's going to, it's not going to be like a night and day difference, I don't think.
Affordable like under 600 or affordable like under 400 for
the monitor or the video card?
The video card.
I think like the $400 to $500 range is probably the best chance we've got there, especially if we're talking a single card. Yeah,
that's what I would prefer to have a single card and not $2,000 worth of cards to power 4K for gaming. MSI releases GT72S G Toby, spelled with 2 I's, G-Sync laptop with eye tracking technology. Announced a long time ago at Computex. Sebastian has the write-up on this at PC Per. Not only includes NVIDIA G-Sync, but eye tracking technology that promises a more immersive gameplay experience. MSI is calling it the world's most advanced gaming laptop. The idea is that you'll be able to switch targets in a game, select objects on the floor, basically activate or interact with the game by simply focusing or looking away at the screen. Available now, going to be bundled with Tom Clancy's The Division, and, quote, currently supports a variety of gaming titles, including Assassin's Creed Syndicate, Assassin's Creed Rogue, Arma 3, Elite Dangerous, and more. You got to play around with it at CES. Did you feel that the eye tracking system was an advantage in gameplay? I mean, this is a $2,600 laptop. It's a nice laptop.
Yeah.
I mean, it's badass. 1 terabyte. Well, actually, SSD. It's funny. It's 2 drives, 256 gigabyte SSD, and a 1 terabyte HDD, a Blu-ray burner, killer networking, 32 gigs of memory, a GTX 980M, a Core i7 6820HK, a 17-inch 1080p screen, and that Toby eye tracking. Toby eye tracking works. I've gotten a chance to play with it. I've never really played with it in a real game, not a demo game.
Right. So, I mean, I spent maybe 15 minutes with it at CES this year, and it worked way better than I expected it to. So the demo they had running there was on Assassin's Creed Syndicate, and the gameplay loop was, hey, you know, there's a significant portion of the game where you have like a tether that you can throw across from one building to the other, and, you know, traverse across the gap that way. Normally when you're aiming that grappling hook, if you will, across it, you have to move your thumbstick around and kind of, it's a third-person game, so wherever the guy kind of looks, you know, you can kind of figure out what attachment point at the other building it would have. With the eye tracking implementation, it actually uses your eyes to select the location. You hit the button on the controller or your keyboard or whatever to actually fire it, and it worked very well. It worked very quickly. There was not a perceivable lag behind it, and it was pretty cool. Now, I didn't play enough of it to know, like, is this a big advantage for gameplay, or is this kind of like a little tricky thing that they were able to use as a demo? The other thing that they did in this game was, I think it'll show up here in this video in just a second, is that they basically used your eye location to do high dynamic range. So if you see the screen, it's changing brightness. That's not like a camera problem. That's not the game screwing up. It's basically tracking my eyes. So if I look at the bright spot on the right-hand side of the screen, it will come into the correct dynamic range, and the dark area would kind of fade out. If I'm looking at the dark spots, you know, the dark area where the roof is, it will come into, and it kind of blows out the area on the outside. And it was very fast. It responded very quickly. Like I said, it wasn't laggy. It wasn't. It didn't seem like it was going to slow me down. You could see this being used for games that have depth of field, right? Like depth of field in games has always been a kind of a dumb thing, in my opinion, because they basically use depth of field to try to get you to look at the thing they want you to look at, as opposed to responding to what you're actually looking at. With this technology, they could do that, right? They could put whatever you're not looking at out of focus more if they wanted to do that for some, you know, whatever gameplay reason they wanted to do. So I thought it worked really well. I mean, the price of the MSI laptop is high for sure, but keep in mind that it is a high-end gaming laptop hardware regardless, and they're just kind of adding this feature in. So I don't really know what the markup is for this particular, for the Tobii eye tracking stuff integrated to it. But there's obviously some, it's probably $100 or $200 or something like that. The Tobii eye tracking stuff, they actually sell a camera for it that you can put on your monitor or on your PC at home, right? So if you want to have the eye tracking capability, but you don't, you know, this is one laptop that has it, obviously they need a bigger audience than that. So there's like essentially like a webcam type thing that has IR cameras and then IR lights that, you know, they're shining into your eyes, and then they're reading the reflections back, essentially is how the technology works. And then if you read in that post, there are other games that have support for it. Assassin's Creed Syndicate, Assassin's Creed Rogue, Arma 3, Elite Dangerous, and the new Tom Clancy's The Division, which I think is coming out this month or March, will all have support for Tobii eye tracking tech in there. And I think this game might ship with The Division. I think it includes a copy of The Division as well. But I've asked for one of these to review. I want to try out like the idea of Elite Dangerous with eye tracking technology sounds really, really, really cool, right? Like kind of a arcade sim, or not arcade sim, but like a flight sim, space sim game with eye tracking tech. Sounds like it has a lot of potential to be useful and fun. So I definitely want to try that out. I don't know what the long term, the tail of this tech is, with VR and AR kind of getting all the attention right now. But I have a feeling it's going to be more interesting than people kind of expected. It's pretty easy to be to write this off as just oh yeah, another gimmick. But if they do it well and they integrate it with games that use it right, it could be pretty interesting.
Well, it's funny because one of the other stories we had later on in the show was looking at, where did it go? iFluence.
Yeah,
we don't normally. So they're dealing. iFluence is creating an eye tracking interface, and the idea is that it's going to allow you to navigate virtual reality hands-free, right? So a quick write-up on TechCrunch on it. You know, they're a startup. They're in San Francisco, and the idea is that, you know, simply by looking at things, this is you will actually be able to interact with the interface in front of you, right? So, you know, I keep joking that what I really want, you know, I want my virtual holographic displays. I want to talk to Jarvis. I want to use my hands, but none of that's going to happen anytime soon. And you know, one of the interesting lines that Lucas Matney has in the story is, at first I was feeling skeptical and wondered if the demo had actually been engineered to make it easier for me to go through, but after trying to trick the sensors for a bit and getting stuck in the demo, I realized that perhaps I've gotten a bit too jaded or paranoid for a 20-year-old tech reporter. You know, because he learned the controls for the navigation in a minute or two, and that you can get really fast with it with practice. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. There's this, you know, eye tracking tech I don't think is going to go away anytime soon.
Mhm.
You know, I think it's going to be interesting to see how it works and kind of what the future of it is. You know, is it going to be VR? Is there a real application for it mobile? Which is one of the things I think that iFluence is banking on. Um, it's uh, it's a really interesting idea. You know, I'm curious to see how it ends up, you know, working out in the real world and what it ends up being. But I don't know. While we're talking about VR, which seems to be a theme of the day, EVGA released GeForce GTX Ti VR Edition, which sounds like a raging, ridiculous, like, you know, yeah, you know, you're snickering because oh yeah, the VR edition.
Mhm.
You know, the specs for VR PCs are pretty stiff, right? Because you're dealing with a tremendous number, you know, something that doesn't quite make VR pale, but you're dealing with pretty stiff specs on the rendering.
Right.
And so what makes this the VR edition is they included, Scott wrote this up for PC Per, Scott Michaud, a 5.25-inch bay that provides a pair of USB 3.0 ports and an HDMI 2.0 connection on the front of the case, in assuming, of course, your case still has a 5.25-inch drive bay on the front, which is getting less and less common as time goes by. But the idea is that it'll make it easy to connect and disconnect your VR devices, right, Scott? Which, knowing a few indie VR developers, seems to be a part of their workflow. Scott's kind of curious whether or not gamers will actually do this. But if you're looking for an easy way to not have to duck behind your case or walk behind your desk or crawl under your desk to unplug and plug your VR system gear,
Right.
you know, it's an option.
The critical part here is what the markup is going to be. As it currently sits, since this is a brand new product and the other competing, you know, comparative GPUs from EVGA are on sale, right? They've been on the market for a while, so they're you know, the prices, like right now there's like a $70 to $80 price delta between this card and the version without the HDMI port in the back and the front panel bay. If it sticks to that, this is not a worthwhile investment for somebody looking to build into VR. But if it were $20 or $30 and you are somebody who is going to get VR, you're definitely going to get a Rift, and you want to be able to disconnect it and move it or put it away or something like that, I could see that markup being worth the added cost. But at $80, I'll crawl under the desk for $80. I guess it depends on how many times I'd have to crawl under the desk, but yeah, I'd get under the desk and unplug the cables. Or, you know, we had, I think it was Alan, somebody yesterday suggested, oh, you know, you just get like an HDMI extension cable and like duct tape it to the top of your PC and around to the back, and you could do a similar thing. And you could, obviously not as neat and as clean. But again, if it were $80, I might be willing to make that sacrifice. So,
well,
it's a neat idea.
One of the first comments on PC Per is, quote, the consumer version of the Rift uses 3x USB 3.0 ports plus 1x USB 2.0 ports along with the HDMI port. And apparently it's one USB 3.0 for the head-mounted display, one USB 3.0 for the Constellation camera, one USB 2.0 for the XP1 controller wireless adapter. So I guess you can put the wireless adapter on the back of your PC. Unless you get the touch controllers, which is an extra USB 3.0 port. So,
right. I mean, the assumption here is that your case will already have two USB front panels, two USB 3.0 front panels, and then this is just two more. But then that also assumes that your motherboard has two USB 3.0 front panel connectors, like headers on it, which a lot of Z170 boards do have that, but not all. And so it's something to keep in mind that you know, if you get this card and your motherboard only has one set of USB front panel headers, then either the two on the EVGA 5.25-inch bay piece aren't going to work, or the two on your case normally aren't going to work. So, you know, there's something to be concerned there. It's not a perfect solution, but it's interesting for at least a small segment of people.
Interesting, at least for a small segment of people, is not what I would call a glowing endorsement for Mr. Ryan.
Not yet. Not yet.
You're thinking about it, though.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't know. It's there's so many strange products So many companies trying to get just a little tiny edge over the competition. So many disappointed users when they realize they paid $80 extra for something that doesn't work very well. You pointed out something particularly cruel about this product, new from Sony. It's a SATA, SATA 3.0 interface SSD drive, the SLW-M series SSDs, which you referred to as being one letter away from slow.
And I say that knowing nothing about the product, right? Like we don't have any of these. I don't know what they're based on. I don't know any of that stuff. I just know that perhaps the naming scheme was suboptimal inside the product development group here. But it makes a lot of sense for Sony to be in the SSD market if they're going to sell it in their own products, or maybe they attach it to some of their high-end professional camera lines, right? It's still the Red uses SSDs, SATA-based SSDs for storage and capture. So you might be able to sell to some of those types of people because they tend to be less sensitive on price and more sensitive on kind of reliability, brand, those types of things when doing that type of content. So yeah, I don't know. It looks like they're going to have 240 and 480 gigs, 2.5-inch SATA 3, read speeds at 560 megs per second, write speeds at 530 megs per second. So you're pretty much at saturating the SATA bus at that point. But we don't know what type of technology they're using, either controller or flash memory. Everything else is just kind of speculation, and the prices have not been made to the public.
It's an unusual. I was just kind of like, why is Sony jumping into this market now? I mean, it's now incredibly, the market's saturated. Most of the smaller manufacturers are getting stomped. Samsung seems to own the market. Intel is doing most of the stuff at the high. I just thought it was a very peculiar move for Sony, to start doing this at this particular juncture.
I would agree.
I can only imagine what Alan had to say about it. Oh, my goodness. Digital data, ladies and gentlemen, is essential to our lives. Drobo is the safe, simple, and expandable solution for all of your storage needs. There's a Drobo box sitting right next to me over here, connected to my desktop PC. Look, this episode of This Week in Computer Hardware is brought to you by Drobo and the Drobo 5N. If you've never checked out Drobo, I'm kind of surprised. We've been talking about it for a long time. Drobo 5N, perfect for network-attached storage. It's a media server, a file server, a backup solution, easy to use. You just plug it into your switch or your router, and you're ready to go. Apps let you back up data to 2 different cloud service providers or sync via BitTorrent and Sync. They are pretty independent that way. It also works well with the Plex on the new Apple TV. The Plex app on the new Apple TV is outstanding. Photographers should check out the Drobo Mini or the Drobo 5D. The Mini is lightweight and portable, just over 2 pounds, 4 drive bays for up to 8 terabytes of, you can basically slam little 2.5-inch SSDs in there. The 5D is the one I've got right here on my desk. It's a desktop unit with space for 5 3.5-inch drives and a maximum capacity of 64 terabytes, which even by my standards is a lot of storage. And both have optional mSATA SSD acceleration bays. So you could basically drop in an additional drive to accelerate small file reads. This is incredibly useful with image library software like Adobe Lightroom or Apple Photos, as well as its predecessors, Aperture and iPhoto. I've been using Drobo for years. Drobo is one of the first companies that looked at NAS boxes and said, these don't have to be complicated and emotionally traumatic to use. And if you can look at you can see it right there. If you can look at that little yellow, LED there and go, hey, I need to fix something, you can probably safely operate a Drobo. If you know your colors, if you can operate a standard 8-pack of Crayola crayons, you could probably manage to keep your data safe with a Drobo. Data received by a Drobo and not yet written to disk is protected if there's a sudden power loss. Even better, Drobos have an internal eUSB device where data is copied if there's a power failure to protect against long outages, which is pretty smart. Adding and replacing drives in your Drobo is super easy. No tools are required, and their Beyond RAID technology lets you expand on the fly and mix and match drives. So if you got a hodgepodge of drives, or if you're updating in the future and you're like, oh, I'm just going to buy one of these 4 or 6 terabyte drives now, it will play pretty nicely with the rest of the drives in your system. You know, the colored lights in the front of the Drobo communicate status. It's pretty idiot-proof. It sports Thunderbolt, Gigabit, USB 3.0 connections, depending on which model you get. Do yourself a favor. Visit drobo.com/twit to learn more and check out their complete line of products. And when you use the code TWIT100, you're going to save $100 off the purchase of a Drobo Mini, a Drobo 4Bay, or a Drobo 5N. Drobo.com/twit. Use the code TWIT100. We want to thank Drobo for their support of This Week in Computer Hardware and Twit.
Definitely.
Oh, my goodness. Asus PB32Q 2560 by 1440 32-inch VA panel monitor review. Is it glorious?
It's just maybe to some segments, right? So this was an interesting product to look at.
Another glowing endorsement.
Well, so here's the thing, right? I had them send me this product for review because I had not really seen a display with this combination of specifications before, right? So it's a 2560 by 1440, 75 hertz screen. It's a VA panel, so vertical alignment screen. So it's not TN, it's not IPS, it's VA, but it's 32 inches as well, which is pretty big, right? For you know, I don't know of any larger WQHD displays, and I don't know of any larger 1080p displays, well, other than TVs, obviously. But I was very curious about, like, is the pixel pitch going to be too big? You know, what kind of how does the PPI on this kind of affect it? How does the VA technology hold up in these types of things? Because I didn't really know exactly what I was getting into in terms of the VA side of things, but a VA vertical alignment monitors tend to have better blacks than even IPS. That's what they excel at, is blocking the backlight more effectively from coming through the screen. They also have better viewing angles than TN, not quite as good as IPS, but better than TN. But they also have pretty good color reproduction. So they're kind of a middle ground between a TN and an IPS screen. But where they kind of fall behind some is in pixel response. So they tend to be slower, higher pixel persistence displays, which can be detrimental when you're viewing fast-moving things like games, right? So my general consensus is on this display is that the build quality is fantastic. I love the industrial design that Asus does on these displays. The OSD is great. It's got, you know, DVI, VGA, HDMI, DisplayPort, audio pass-through. It's got all types of connectivity options, a 4-port USB 3.0 hub. It comes out of the box very, very well very close to perfectly color calibrated, and after we ran through our normal process, it calibrated fantastically, and we have that profile for you to download. The detriment is the overdrive performance on it is pretty subpar. Asus calls their overdrive tech trace-free technology across their entire line of monitors, and what overdrive does is it helps to eliminate ghosting by sending higher voltage to a pixel earlier so that it reaches the color it needs to be at quicker, essentially. And essentially, as like 6 different settings available through that, you know, trace-free from 0 to 120 in 20-point steps. Even at the highest maximum trace-free, you know, overdrive setting, you can still pretty clearly see a second. What we're looking at here is a windmill blade, essentially, in our demo. And usually on more of the gaming-centric monitors, if we set trace speed to 100, you actually start to see negative ghosting, right, where it's overdriving too much, and you get this dark kind of black fill-in behind it instead of a secondary image, right? And that's when you know you've gone too far. You want to step back 1 or 2 options or settings in that option, and you usually dial it in pretty well. And in this case, we weren't able to really dial it into a place where I felt that it would make a good gaming monitor. Now, that being said, I don't think it's a good gaming monitor, but it is a pretty good productivity or content creation because of its high color accuracy. It's a 10-bit screen with 12-bit lookup table on it. It has pretty good viewing angles, and it's relatively inexpensive. It's a $539 monitor currently selling on Amazon. So that's for the size you're getting and some of those features, that's actually a pretty good price. There are competing options. There's a Samsung and an Acer that essentially have identical specs, probably all using the same panel. but they're all in the same, $10 to $20 price range with each other. And for me, if you're somebody working in Photoshop or video editing or something like that, and you want a large screen, the benefit of a large screen is going to help you. Then I think something like the Asus PB328Q would fit you nicely, right? It's big, it's got a relatively high resolution. The pixel pitch is still, I think, very good. It's not like it was so big that like the pixels stood out to you either in gaming or in productivity usage. But for gamers, this is not a monitor I'd recommend. It's not awful, but there's just so many other gaming monitors out there at this point that are very focused on that segment, that are going to be anywhere from $100 less than this monitor to a couple $100 more than this monitor. They're going to have, other features, better overdrive, better response time, support for variable refresh, whether that be G-Sync or FreeSync. That this one is kind of, this is meant for other markets. This is meant for office environments, content markets, not so much for actually doing the gaming itself.
There you have it. Although I got to say, there's nothing wrong with a good productivity laptop. Desktop monitor.
No, I 100% agree. Like, my PC at this office, like the main one, this would be a perfect monitor for that because I don't do gaming on that one. If I do gaming, I go to the GPU test bed where it's a permanent gaming setup, right? And this would be a fantastic display for that environment. I'm writing, I'm editing photos, I'm watching videos. That's pretty much what gets done on that display. And if you just want a 32-inch. That's a massive panel for people who don't understand that. That's a sizable difference from like a 27-inch monitor. Or if you have like a 24-inch 1080p, this is going to feel like a television sitting on your desk. But it does a good job in all those other areas. And like I said, for $530, it's not cheap, but it's fairly inexpensive, I think, for the feature set.
Fairly inexpensive for the feature set is a good thing.
Yeah.
Oculus Ready PC pre-orders announced include Rift bundle. Sebastian's got the information up on PCPro.com. Basically, an upcoming pre-order date for Oculus Ready PCs from mainstream manufacturers, Asus, Alienware, and Dell. Quote, these PCs, says Oculus, have been battle tested and verified by Oculus to deliver an incredible Rift experience. We're also thrilled to announce that starting February 16th at 8 a.m. Pacific time, you can pre-order Oculus Ready PC and Rift bundles from Best Buy, Amazon, and the Microsoft Store starting at $1,499 for a limited time only. The bundles will include an Oculus certified PC and everything that comes with Rift, the headset, the sensor, the remote, and Xbox One controller, Valkyrie Founders Pack, and Lucky's Tale. Lucky's Tale is the sort of Sonic-ish, bouncing cartoon character-ish 3D immersive VR game. They're going to ship in limited quantities to select countries and regions from retail partners starting in April. Generally speaking, you're getting the Core i5-6400 processor, an NVIDIA GeForce GTX 970 GPU, and 8 gigabytes of system memory, which is pretty much the specs from last summer. GTX 970 or AMD 290, Intel i5 4590, 8 gigabytes of RAM. The Rift, it alone costs $600. So, you might be thinking, this is too much for this. Well, actually, knock $600 off that $1,500 price, and you got an idea of what the PC is actually costing you.
Right.
It's not awful for $900. It's not spectacular for $900.
Yeah. I mean, so I ordered and requested a bunch of hardware for our VR builds, and we're coming into the same battle that these PCs have. Is right. Okay, after you get the price of the Oculus Rift out of the dollar amount that you're spending, how do you build a PC for $900? How do you build a PC for $1,500 that will be as good as it can be for virtual reality or gaming in general? And then you got to think all these guys, Asus, Dell, Alienware. They have their own markups they need to have. They need to have their own stuff. Although, you look at it, Asus is pretty much making all the components that go into their machines, so they might have some advantages there. But, specifications wise, it's not going to be anything better than you could build yourself, and probably maybe a step or two below what you would build yourself. This may be the only way for you to get an Oculus Rift relatively soon, though, as well, as back ordered as they are on the pre-orders, right? I haven't checked recently what the what like the current status is on somebody who were to pre-order an Oculus Rift today, but my guess is June or July. July, yeah. Ken's telling me it's probably July now.
Fortunately, I have
that's as expected ship date July 2016. So.
Yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting question. Are you even going to get optimal performance out of a single 970? I mean, do you need a pair of 970s to really make it sing?
See, that's actually an interesting debate still to have, because I still don't know what everybody's stance is on multi GPU for VR. Right. I would if somebody were debating that, I would say don't buy two 970s, buy a 980 Ti, right? Right. Buy one of the fastest cards you can get rather than two of, a high-end mid-range part. Because I just don't know. Both AMD and NVIDIA say, oh yeah, of course it's going to work, right? We have these plans in place, but nobody's really talked about the specifics of it. And because frame time consistency and frame delivery consistency is so important for a VR experience to not just throw you off, right. They need to, and I think they're going to take their time to figure it out and do it right. So I wouldn't plan on having, like, if you worry about multi-GPU profiles for normal PC games being available on day one versus, fixed later, like Rise of the Tomb Raider, SLI had all kinds of issues until essentially 4 or 5 days after the release. So I think it will be even longer and even more difficult for these guys, both the driver teams and development teams, to get that right on VR games. So something to keep in mind.
Something to definitely keep in mind. Hey, another thing you should keep in mind in between your bouts of trying to decide whether you're going to be a single or dual GPU adopter when your Rift shows up is the TWiCH newsletter. We are sending out TWiCH, the mothership, is sending out weekly emails with what is happening on TWiCH, talking about exciting stuff from all the shows. If you want to subscribe, and you should, you can sign up for TWiCH's email newsletter at twitch.tv/newsletter. That is twitch.tv/newsletter. Get yourself a weekly email with all the info about what's going on, what's exciting, what's enthusiastic, what's awesome on TWiCH. Oh my goodness. Somewhere around on my desk is the $9 chip PC, which apparently has run away from home again. Oh my goodness. Here's one of them.
Ah, all right.
We finally got a chance to review this in full on Tech Thing this week. This is the $9 competitor to the Raspberry Pi. No Ethernet, and you might notice there is no HDMI on this puppy. A little hard to see on here. But it does a couple things. It's kind of a different philosophy. I would have reviewed this when it showed up a couple weeks ago, but the preloaded operating system was foobarred when I went to update it. There's more to the story there. You can find out about that on Tech Thing, but it's an interesting option and is only standard def video right now through a composite connection, which is my one real complaint about this. The HDMI hat for this cannot show up soon enough, but really cool in that it has the ability to charge a lithium-ion battery on board, has battery management on board, Wi-Fi is on board, 802.11, Bluetooth is all on board. Really interesting parts. We're starting to play around with it and get some ideas of stuff we can do with it. But more information on that on Tech Thing. But I wanted to point out that it is running, and if you did pre-order one off the Kickstarter, if you got it in January or later, you shouldn't have any of the issues I had with getting it to boot out of the box. We also, Shannon did a review of Huawei's Honor 5X, which is probably the one worthy competitor, the great worthy competitor to the Moto G, if you're looking for a $200 phone.
Right.
I think it's going to be a really, like the next year and a half, I think there's going to be a lot of badass, inexpensive $200 or less out of the box phones next year.
I agree. I'm going to Mobile World Congress for the first time.
Really? That's awesome, dude.
Yeah,
I'm so excited for you.
I'm a little nervous about it, to be honest. For me, it's been a very long time since I have first gone to any show, right?
Uh-huh.
So I'm very nervous about like, oh, where are all these halls at, the meetings, how long does it take between walks? How's the public transit system? I've made all these meetings. I'm like, I hope I left enough time between them to make it between every place. But I'm excited to go. I've never been to Barcelona, and I've also never been to this show, obviously. But like I just scheduled my meeting today with Huawei to do a booth tour. I imagine this will be something that comes up about these particular products. So I'm interested in learning about all these types of things and getting hands-on with them, and in kind of an early platform, I guess.
I'm excited for you. Perhaps if we ask really nicely, we can get you to Skype in from Mobile World Congress. But I've always wanted to go.
Let's see what the flight schedule and all that is. But yeah, for sure.
Barcelona is supposed to be amazing. So that'll be exciting.
I hope
dude.
so. Yeah.
Your first Mobile World Congress.
It is.
One of the things that was funny is I was laughing. Android Police has a good write-up on it. LG announced the fancy touch-enabled cover for the G5 before the phone itself, which I thought was pretty hysterical. Like their process of building enthusiasm about their big G5 announcement at Mobile World Congress was talking about the crazy, the see-through window, touch-sensitive material that allow you to interact with the phone without opening it up. Just, if you scroll down to the bottom there, you can see how you can see some of the things going on through the holes in the material there, and like answer a phone or not answer a phone.
Right.
It's funny to watch the build, the slow burn to Mobile World Congress, which in some ways may actually be even more ridiculous than the slow burn to CES. But
it could be.
Qualcomm's bringing LTE connectivity to wearables. They have their new Wear platform, which I am excited about, if for no other reason than I think having to have a phone to do all the cool stuff with your watch is really irritating, or smartphone tethering, which I guess is the technical way of putting it. Yeah, basically, LG says they're going to have smartwatches and other wearables with the Wear 2100 by year end, reports PC World. The Urbane second edition LTE was supposed to ship last year, but got scratched due to hardware problems. This is going to be interesting, right? Because most of the wearables with cellular connectivity are using 2G or 3G connectivity, and 2G, 3G uses less power than 4G. But Qualcomm says they reduced the size of their LTE modems, they've made it more power efficient, and they're claiming they can get it into a wearable like a smartwatch without hurting battery life, which it would be a good thing given how miserable battery life is for most wearables. If you think getting through a 10-hour day without charging is important. The Wear 2100 chip is a smaller version of the Snapdragon 400, which is currently used in many Android Wear watches, writes PC World. So I think it's going to be interesting to see what's going on there. And developer boards are coming out for these wearables, which I think will be interesting to watch, because MIPS has the creator boards, Intel's done Edison and Curie.
Right.
I think it'd be interesting to play around with one of these, see what you can get it to do. But I don't know. I'm curious. It's I have not really been compelled with any of the wearables I've played around with to actually want to integrate them into my life. So, well, I'm just saying.
Yeah.
At Ryan, Mr. Tweets, at Ryan Shrout, at Patrick Norton. How old or poorly performing does a machine have to be until an SSD won't make a difference? Well, any machine that doesn't have SATA ports on it is too old.
That's a good point.
You know what I mean? Like, that's kind of my boundary, my drawing line. Because any machine that can have a SATA drive plugged into it, it will boot faster, it will load applications faster, it will open up files faster, it will save files faster, considerably, epically, massively faster than a traditional hard drive. You know, and you may think like, oh, my $500 gaming machine that I've had for 4 years. Well, you know what? You may not want to use it for gaming anymore, but if you want to use it for something else, dropping an SSD on there, or dropping an SSD on a laptop you've had for 3 or 4 years, if it doesn't currently have an SSD inside of it, will give you a healthy performance boost. Again, it'll start up faster, it'll suspend faster, it'll hibernate faster, it will you know, again, load applications faster. It's not going to make the games run faster. It's not going to make your applications run faster unless your applications spend a lot of time moving data on and off the hard drive. But, you know, along with going from 4 to 8 gigabytes, I would say, you know, an SSD is a fantastic upgrade. You know, upgrading to 8 gigabytes is a fantastic upgrade. There are a couple things you can do to most laptops or mini laptops that will give you some more life out of them, or your older machine. Yeah, if you're running Windows 10, if you're running OS 10, actually, I hate to run OS 10 with less than 8 gigabytes of RAM, and I hate to run any operating system now without an SSD, because when you launch an operating system now without an SSD, you're just like, because I've been using SSDs for a few years, and I'm just like, this is taking forever.
It's painful.
Why is it taking so long to boot?
Yeah, I agree
taking
with
so
your
long to
sentiment
open
here.
this
There's really no low line that I wouldn't say, oh yeah, no, you'll see an improvement. Like even if, you know, I'm trying to think of how long, you know, SATA 6 gigabit per second ports have been around.
Right.
Gosh, that's got to be like 6 or 7 years, right? 5, 6 years or something like that. Even then, even if you're before that, I would still say yes, do it. Yeah, IDE does seem to be the cutoff. I'd say don't do it if you have IDE, because you can't.
Well, you could get like an a SATA adapter for one of those.
That's true. No, I did have I had an IDE SSD in my first. I had a Lenovo that I think used an IDE connection for an SSD. I think that's what it was. I don't know, but don't do that. Maybe you should just get a different machine. Yeah.
If you got a SATA port, go ahead and buy an SSD. That's what we're saying here. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to contemplate Ryan's imminent departure to Barcelona for Mobile World Congress, and I'm going to go back to working on tech thing. Anything exciting you can tease coming up in the next week, or are you bound to secrecy?
No, we have this project we're going to try. I don't know how it's going to work. So I don't know anything about 3D printing. And I basically have a 3D printer and a bunch of filament coming in, and I'm just going to sit down at this table with a laptop and a camera on and see what I figure out, and see what works and what doesn't, and then see if I need to get sent a second 3D printer because I broke the first one or something. So that's kind of like I'm kind of purposefully going into it blind. Like, what would a person who knows nothing about 3D printing do or act or assume or whatever when using one of these devices for the first time?
I desperately want to make a suggestion based on personal experience, but if you don't want that suggestion, don't update the firmware on it until after you tried printing ones, and make sure you have a copy of the current firmware that's on the machine before you upgrade it. That's all.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah.
Temperatures are interesting. Buy a can of Aquanet hairspray, a roll of blue tape,
like blue painter's tape.
Blue painter's tape. Beware of any 3D printer that costs more than, say, $300. It doesn't have a heated platform. A box can be your friend if there are thermal issues in your office. Patience is a virtue. Everything takes longer than you think.
Yeah, I do. I am kind of preparing for that.
It's incredible and amazing, and I've never seen my 8-year-old stare so intently at anything as I have watching him watch 3D objects get printed. But oh my goodness, when things don't work the way they're supposed to, it is
a little frustrating.
It is all the hell of printing in 1995, but 84 times worse, because it's cool. You're gonna love it. And
plus, it's three-dimensional.
Wait till you start trying to create your first 3D object, like design your first 3D object.
Yeah,
that's an interesting process. It's awesome.
I'm excited
to watch a reaction. I feel like we should. I have one in a house to build. I feel like I should build that. We can parallel boot things simultaneously.
Nice, nice. Yeah, I'm excited that. So hopefully we'll get started on that next week. I'm supposed to get the goods in either Friday or Monday, I think. So we'll see. And I don't know. I'll be curious how many people are even interested in seeing me like ham fist 3D printing, like, because there's gonna be so many people that are gonna know a lot more about it than I do. Be complaining about, why did he try that? Why did he do that? What an idiot! And I was like, well, you know, do what you can.
It's all about real. But that, I mean, this is the way, you know. I got laughed because somebody is like, well, you know, why did you do it that way? I'm like, well, I bought it. It came to my house. I opened the box. I did what was on the instructions, you know,
right.
And that's the way most people use things. Things I know it's a little weird and crazy, but I think things should work out of the box. And if they're not going to work out of the box, then the manufacturer should put something in there that tells you where to go to find out how it should work out of the box.
It'll be fun. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm gonna start with like the cheapest 3D printer and kind of go up the stack. Monoprice is working with us on this. They're getting into that world. So they're going to give me, you know, all the way up to their I think they have like a $700 or $800 model, the dual extrusion and all that type of stuff. So we'll start with the cheap stuff and learn as I go and go up there, and we'll see what kind of interesting crap I make or how much uninteresting crap I could make.
It's a little bit of both.
Yeah,
it's exciting. It is so crazy. I mean, when it works, you will feel more Jetsons than you've ever felt in your entire life. I'm
looking forward to it. It'll be cool.
It is cool. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to wrap this episode of This Week in Computer Hardware. If you're new to the show, do us a favor, go over to twit.tv/Twitch, and you'll find the links to subscribe to the show, and you can download our older episodes. We hope you are along for the ride. If you got a question, do us a favor, tweet at Ryan Shrout or at Patrick Norton. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we'll see you next week.